This video is going to be finishing up what we started in the last one. In our last video, if you remember, we added a primary image to the to-dos. But in doing that, I kind of made the list look a little ugly. Let's assume you won't always have a primary image. I should still have all of the to-dos lined up, and I should probably have a default, let's say, gray color that shows up here for anything that doesn't have an image. So I'm going to show you how to do that. Most of that should be in AppGyver. And so what we're going to do is start with a data variable. And actually, my prior video blew up on me. My laptop locked up. So I think I have a start. Let me go here to what we did. So let me just go ahead and delete this, because I kind of like to do it from scratch just so that I make sure that you guys can be successful and I haven't left steps out. So let me get rid of that variable. Okay, once again, this list is going to get a default or the one that comes back from Xano. To do that, I need to have a default image as an app variable available. And what we're going to do is just call that default underscore image. And the nice thing with the image component in AppGyver is you can actually use this base 64 encoded image approach so that you don't have to use an image URL as the image source. So it makes it nice and concise, because I don't have to create an image out on S3, hope that I never delete it, and then use that. So I can just grab this data URL, and I'm going to put that in our default image initial value. Go ahead and save that. So this, in essence now, even though it's text as a variable type, is actually going to be treated as an image in the image component. So let's go ahead and come into our to-do list screen and come over to our image source. And instead of using just the variable, we're going to create a formula where we use either that variable or the default image. So we'll get to learn a new function here as well. Let me go ahead and I'm going to cut that so that yep, I got it. And we're going to use an if statement, because we're going to check if we have that URL or don't. And to know if we have it, we're going to use a function called if nully, which if we take a look at that, once we get our parentheses in and it shows up, we are going to check if the current media image URL that we're getting back from the Xano API, we're going to check if that is null or undefined. And I don't actually know which one it's going to be. I haven't really checked, and thanks to the if nully function, I don't have to know. But if this is not a defined or is a null value, which is what happens when there's no image associated with that to do, then I want to use a default image. And we are going to use the default image we just created. And if there is a URL coming back in the current media image URL, then we're just going to pass back that item. So what we have here is our if statement, which is the whole area. We have our if nully, which is current checking the condition of the variable. And then we have our true condition, a default image, and our false condition, we already have an image. So if all this works correctly, which, as you all know, isn't usually the case for me, we should see a gray, and that's sad, I broke it completely. Okay, let's come back here and see what I messed up. We have a formula, we have if nully, probably have something wrong in that if nully, because I'm not seeing if. Let's take a look here. Yeah, I'm not even, I think I have my, oh, there we go. See, there we go. Let's come back to this. There's a reason this never showed up and I ignored it. Notice how it just shows me the if condition because it does not recognize the if nully. Well, it's not if nully, it's is nully. And when I do it correctly, it shows up, gives me the definition like I was talking about, returns whether a value is nully, which is true if it's null, or undefined, which is what I was saying but not seeing. So at this point, when I save it and come back over here, there, much better. I always find a way to introduce a problem. So now any to-do that does not have a variable or an image associated to it in Xano, the AppGyver app will check in that formula and assign that base64, I'll call it an inline image that we created within our app. You can obviously make that base64 default underscore image variable anything you want. You can make it colors, you can make it an actual default profile image. All you have to do is copy in the text of the base64 image to do that. Okay, so that makes me feel better. We now have a good list. It's all lined up and everything gets some sort of image. What I'm also going to do is in the last one, I wasn't really excited about the fact that for our update to do primary image, I didn't successfully get the to do ID at the end. And I think I figured out what that problem was. So we're going to add that back in. There shouldn't be a whole lot of change that we have to do for that. So this will allow us to pass the to do ID on the URL, which also helps me understand when I see this URL definition that that's an important piece of it. So I'm going to add it here. And if you remember what we had last time, we had the ID as part of the body. And so I am going to remove that from the schema. We're just going to leave the content, and then we're going to click here and remove that property. And the reason we're removing it from the schema is because we're going to add it to the URL placeholder. So we're going to give it a to-do ID. It's called ID. That's important to get right because that's the same variable input name that is in Xano. It will be a number. It is not static. And we're good there. Okay, so now if I look at our create record post on this, I've got the ID specified at the end. I tell it that needs to be passed in as a URL placeholder. And that means if I come to the test, you'll see I have my authorization like we already had, the to-do ID with my label and then the key. And then this should no longer have the to-do, it just has the content. Okay, so let's go take a look at Xano and make sure that we get it matching. Okay, so we're going to add the ID to the end of this like we had originally when I failed in the last video. So we're going to put a slash, a curly brace, an ID, a curly brace, and save that. Oops, the name is already being used by another query. Okay, see, I knew I could mess something up. Let's take a look here at what other query. Maybe I actually have that for my testing as well. Okay, upload. I'm going to close these and I'm going to refresh this just to make sure I've got the most current everything. We'll come back to our upload and let's try that again. Okay, there we go. So I had some trailing stuff from the testing I was doing. Like I'd mentioned the prior time, my machine locked up and I was kind of left in a funny state. So we're good here. We went into settings, we added the ID to the end. We have the ID already defined here. So now this ID is what's getting passed in as opposed to from what would have been the body. And most of that's transparent to us because it's happening in Xano on our behalf. So let's go ahead and let's live on the edge. You know, sometimes I like to be good and run and debug and test. I'm going to pretend that this change didn't make much of a difference. And since I closed my tabs and I will need an authorization key, You always get to watch me do this, such fun. I'm going to go back into the To-Do app and the APIs, and we're going to do a quick login, run and debug, and get our off key so we can make sure this is working. Okay. Grab this token, and let's head back over here and change this to static text. We will type in bearer space. We will do, let's go look at Xano and pick ourselves an ID from the database. And let's see, to-do ID. Let's update number 10. There we have 10. And then we need to pick, we don't want to do gray. We'll do the red. So we'll grab this base64 encoded image and attach that into the image content. And I'm going to grab this again because I don't have that in the tab anymore. Okay, so we run this and it works wonderfully, and we know it does because here is the to-do with the red image. So at this point, we have done some nice cleanup and additions to make sure our to-do list still looks good and we can still add stuff in. Plus, I now have what I originally wanted, which is in Xano, I now have an API that in my mind makes more sense for the next person that comes to look at it. They will see that we have an upload for a to-do primary and an ID at the end so that they know what that's getting attached to. So I'm a fan of that. We got that working. Let's see if we can do a couple of more cleanup things while we're here. For this image that's getting displayed, I'll move over here. Not a real harsh square 90-degree angle corner person. So how about we go into the component editor in AppGyver and round those edges a little bit with a border radius. Now we can't do that right here because this is a component. We have to double click on it. And then it will take us into this component view, an isolation view. And our image is right over here. And you'll see that cell 1 activated. And we want to mess with image 2. And we're going to go over to styles. And we're going to pick border. And we're going to want to pick a radius. I don't know, let's try 4. I'm not really sure what we want. Let's see if that looks any better for us. There we go. It softens it a little bit. I like that look. We're going to go with that for now. And I'm going to keep this video short, I think. As I say that, I'm going to come over and look at what I had on my list. We did add a to-do image. We did not do this one yet, but I'm going to pick that up in the next video so that this doesn't turn into a 30-minute long epic. So the next video, what we're going to do, it looks like, is for the, click on that, for this screen, we are going to add in an image component, and we are going to add the URL to the image component that shows that image at the top. And then we'll probably also allow you to change that image, which will be the same code that we used in the profile screen. So thanks for hanging with me on this two-stepper. We will get it going next time in the details screen.